Death rides the rails as a peril-packed express roars across the continent. A fateful journey. For aboard this thundering train ride desperate, merciless killers, pursuing, searching for the secret that threatens their underworld empire. Every dangerous mile is fraught with excitement and suspense as an innocent girl, caught in the web of mistaken identity, becomes the target for murder.
Sister, I've known some pretty hard cases in my time. You make them all look like putty. You're talking about a dame's life. You may think it's funny for a woman with a kid to stop a bullet for you, but I'm not laughing.
Really? Well, I don't care. She's got twins. You talk like you'd rather I got the bullet. Whose side are you on, anyhow?
Listen, Jingle Jaw, nothing's happened to you yet, has it?
No, and it better not.
Well, then shut up!
All right, Copper. I'm not in this alone, but you are. You're just one guy bucking a big company. Don't matter if you beat my brains out or not. We're in business for keeps.
Where's that list?
I haven't got it.
You in there. You're covered on both sides, here and in the corridor. Open this door or we'll open it and come in shooting.
First door that opens, Copper, I'll put a bullet through this dame's head.
The following is a paid advertisement. Really? A paid advertisement? Wait, the B-Movie Cast got paid? Yes, the following is a paid advertisement. This episode of the B-Movie Cast is brought to you by the estate planning services of Twyla Minear Brooks, attorney at law. Remember, when the zombie apocalypse comes, things will move pretty fast.
The body should be disposed of at once, preferably by cremation.
Well, how long after death, then, does the body become reactivated?
It's only a matter of minutes.
Minutes? Well, that doesn't give people time to make any arrangements.
Oh, you're right. It doesn't give them time to make funeral arrangements. The bodies must be carried to the street and burned. They must be burned immediately. Soak them with gasoline and burn them. The bereaved will have to forego the dubious comforts that a funeral service will give. They're just dead flesh and dangerous.
So don't leave your estate planning needs until the last minute, because you don't know when that last minute could come. Call Twyla Minear Brooks, attorney at law, at 859-351-2294. That's 859-351-2294. Remember, when you go, you don't want people saying,
"Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up."
Twyla Minear Brooks, attorney at law, is licensed for practice in the state of Kentucky. Consult your local attorney for matters outside of the state of Kentucky.
Command mark. The time will be running at X-20 seconds. Mark. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fire.
Spawned by the continuing decline and fall of society as we know it, and created on the second-floor spare-bedroom studio in the Piedmont of South Carolina. Podcasting on a shoestring budget and changing the world one freak at a time. It's the B-Movie Cast with your host, Vince Rotolo.
From coast to coast and worldwide via the internet, this is the B-Movie Cast, the podcast of unusual film and television.
Hi, guys, and welcome back to the B-Movie Clubhouse for episode 511 of the B-Movie Cast. Before I go any farther, I want to get our contact information out of the way. We love hearing from all of you, so we have a feedback segment devoted to your comments and suggestions, and this is how you can contact us. Option 1, pick up your phone and dial 888-936-0808. This is a toll-free number and a very easy way to leave a voice message. Option 2, you can make your own MP3 file and send it in to bmoviecast@gmail.com. Or use your smartphone voice software and record a call, then just send that in as an attachment instead. Or option 3, if you're not into talking, you can just shoot us an email to bmoviecast@gmail.com. Our website is bmoviecast.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast. It's free, and there you can join us on the Facebook BMovieCast fan page and letterbox. Also, you can play the contest by sending in your answer by email to bmoviecast@gmail.com with contest in the subject line. And check out the links while you're there, or buy a t-shirt. I currently have smalls to 4Xs. If you want to help us financially, there's a donation box you can click on as a supporter on the Lugosi, Karloff, Agar, and the infamous Xanadu level through PayPal. Also, the easiest way to donate is to click on the Amazon bar on the right side of our homepage. This Amazon link will take you to Amazon.com to make your purchase. It doesn't cost you anything, and you can still log into your personal accounts when you get there. It's completely private, so think about us before you buy online. We have our co-host from Lexington, Kentucky, author, editor, screenwriter, film producer, Nick Brown. He has a new website, and it is authornickbrown.com. That's AUTHORNICBROWN.com. He's the author of the Werewolf for Hire series starting with Blood Curse. He's also selling a series of books in collaboration with his wife, Fiona Young Brown, called the B-Movie Cookbooks. All of these are available on Amazon. He has produced 3 movies. The first 2 are Wretch and Loss Prevention, both of which could be ordered on Blu-ray or DVD through Amazon. And he is also the producer of the award-winning film Fall of Usher, which is now available for purchase or rental on iTunes and Amazon streaming. Today's guest is Totally Rockin' Kenny B, known now as the segment producer for the Rondo and Bolo award-winning podcast Monster Kid Radio. His look at famous monsters garnered high praise during the presentation of Joe Bob Briggs's Bolo Award, when drive-in theater co-host, former stripper and porn star Diana Darcy, the mail girl Prince, declared, "They read excerpts from famous monsters of filmland, and they totally rock." Riding high on that moniker, Kenny provides weekly looks at Classic Magazine for Derek Cook's podcast. He is also known as Santitito, or the Teensy Weensy Santo, 11th son of the famous Mexican wrestler El Santo. This illegitimate child sprang from a desire to have fun at the Monster Bash during the Mexican movie night. Kenny has lived in Mexico since 1991 and speaks Spanish just fine. With Silver Mask on, he becomes the 11th son of Santo, sprouting out wrestling challenges to the wimpy American and British monster hunters. First, it was a crazy interruption of the movie's intro. The next year, a PowerPoint presentation. It all ended with the classic short film Santo versus the great-grandson of Guanji. He also produced a Monster Bash exclusive dub of the 1966 classic Santo versus the Martian Invasion. Santitito put his mask away in 2014, but some bashers, including yours truly, have never forgotten. But I finally have your name right. It's Santitito, not Santito. Kenny B is the generous patron of our mystery gifts we have during our contest, where he sends a lucky winner a DVD or Blu-ray, magazine or book, pictures, cards, buttons, and something from old Mexico. His ultimate goal for all that gift-giving has been reached. Finally, he is the guest of a B-Movie Cast episode. Kenny is also a dues-paying member of the Film Noir Foundation, for which he gets a digital magazine 3 times a year, and the joy of knowing he's had a hand in restoring such classics as Too Late for Tears, High Tide, and Woman on the Run. In his heart, he's a monster kid through and through, but his mind loves noir, and that's what he's going to talk about today. Okay, today's movie is the 1952 film noir thriller called The Narrow Margin. Although I always dread film noir, Ken found a classic that I really loved. It's a brilliant film noir gem and a must-see. There are twists I never saw coming, gorgeous lighting and camera angles. It builds at a beautiful pace and set mostly in a great claustrophobic train setting. We won't be giving away any spoilers because Nick will kill me.
That's fairly accurate.
But it would spoil the film too much, so...
And
watch.
this will make this probably the shortest B-movie cast that we've ever had.
True. I watched a really good copy streaming on Amazon Prime for a small fee. It's also available on YouTube for a fee, and it's definitely worth a watch. And Kenny sent us some links to watch it on YouTube, and Nick's going to post them because there's an intro that, what was that guy's name on the film noir?
Eddie Muller.
Eddie
the
Muller.
Czar of Noir,
Okay.
the head of the Film Noir Foundation.
Oh.
Eddie Muller. Mm-hmm.
I didn't know he was the head of the Film Foundation. You got to tell us more about the Film Foundation later. Anyway, Nick's going to post these 3 links. One's an intro that he does. Then you can watch the movie for a fee. And then there's another outro that he does, and it's all on YouTube. And it really, there's some good information, and he knows his stuff. So, do you want to get on with the contest first, and then we can...
Contest? What contest?
The answer was Death Sport, 1978.
The answer is always Death Sport, Mary. Doesn't matter what the question is.
Okay.
That's the answer.
Okay, our first prize is a really cool Santitito surprise package. And he showed it to us, and it's really good. He showed us the last one he's going to send out. So.
To be fair, he showed it to you, Mary. I can't see the video.
Oops.
But I did describe the items as I went along.
Yes, he did. So when you get it, post the goodies. Either send me an email or post them on the B-Movie Cast fans page so everybody can see what they are. And the winner is... I hope it's not Santitito. Winner is Marlo Brown.
All right. Marlo will like this.
Yes. Congratulations.
I think I sent him one on my first batch of mystery prizes.
Yeah.
Name sounds familiar.
Yep.
Well, and about that time, Marlo won another prize.
Okay, the second prize is a DVD from Patrick Kelly. It's called The Black Room from 1935. This Columbia horror thriller movie stars Boris Karloff in dual roles. Ignoring an ancient prophecy, evil brother Gregor seeks to maintain his feudal power on his Tyrolean estate by murdering and impersonating his benevolent younger twin in the Black Room. It was directed by Roy William Neal and starred Boris Karloff, Marion Marsh, and Robert Allen. Needless to say, it's from 1935. It's black and white.
Well, that guy just sounds rude.
And the winner is Mike Schiederlo.
You got to say his name right, Mary. Come on, try again.
Schiederlo.
I don't know what his name is, so I'm going to assume that's right.
Well, it's spelled Sciddurlo.
That still didn't help.
I know. I did it phonetically once. I think I got it right this time. Okay. The third prize has been donated by Juan from fifthdimensionfilms.net. That's 5 THDIMENSIONFILMS.net. It's called Warlords of Atlantis, a.k.a. Warlords of the Deep, from 1978. It's 2 deep-sea explorers and their crew must survive a master race of beings and monstrous creatures when they discovered the fabled city of Atlantis. This British adventure science fiction film was directed by Kevin Connor and stars Doug McClure, Peter Gilmore, Lee Brody, and Shane Rimmer. The film was the 4th action fantasy collaboration between Kevin Connor and Doug McClure. The first 3 were made by Amicus Productions, and this one was made by EMI Films. So,
and who was the liquor sponsor to keep Doug McClure going in this one, I'm wondering? What? Dude could only act when he was drunk. Come on.
And the winner is Paul Ruby. Congratulations, Paul. You won. Great movie. And our fourth prize has been donated by our own Nick Brown. Take it away, Nick.
Okay, so our fourth prize tonight is a book by my good friend, filmmaker Kelly Baker from theangryfilmmaker.com. And actually, it's angryfilmmaker.com. www.angryfilmmaker.com. Yeah, I'm totally saying his website a couple of times because you ought to go visit it. Okay, so what is the prize, though? It is his most recent book. It's an anthology of short stories called Dennis Barton is a Bastard, and other stories. And it's a really fun book that Kelly wrote, and while many of the stories are fictional, some of the stories are actually quasi-autobiographical and about things that happened when he was growing up. And it is truly a fun book to read. So I encourage you to check it out, even if you don't win it.
Ooh.
So.
Okay. And the winner is... Santitito.
You
won a book.
Hey! Shoot the stars.
Holy luchador howls, Batman.
Wow.
I do every time I win.
Yeah, but normally we can't hear you. That's the...
And that's another mystery prize that will be sent out sometime in the future. It'll be a little bit bent over as I've read the book, but it'll be a nice book that someone will get sometime in the future. Pay it forward. Pay it forward.
That's true.
Hey.
That's true.
Karma. I give and I receive. Yes.
Yin and yang. So, let's yang on. What
Yes.
Do we have any more prizes, Mary, or am I the last one?
You were the last one.
I'm the last.
Yes.
That's the way it should be, I suppose.
Yes.
All right, so we watched a movie. What movie did we watch?
The Narrow Margin. From
I thought it was The Page Margin.
Well, I want to talk about why I chose this movie.
But thank you for choosing it because I was blown away. It went so fast. I mean, it's only like 70-something minutes, right?
71 minutes.
71 minutes, but it went so fast. It was like, wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, the reason I chose the movie, I think maybe for the first 50 B-movie casts that I listened to, my first comment was, that's not a B-movie. That's not a B-movie. Why do they call this the B-movie cast? That's not a B-movie. So I decided I want to choose a B-movie. And there are a lot of the B-movies, especially the ones in the 50s, which, of course, the B-movie is a second feature in a two-feature lineup of movies, usually shorter than the main feature, less known stars, lower budget. And then in the late 40s and 50s, a lot of those B-movies were what are now classified as film noir. Now, film noir is not something that that they were trying to do or they knew what it was called. They were making crime films. Some of the bigger famous ones, the ones that had big budgets, like Double Indemnity, The Big Sleep, Sunset Boulevard, made by great directors like Billy Wilder, John Huston, Howard Hawks. They were bringing in their style into these crime movies, and they made some classic noirs. But a lot of these B noirs were, well, we don't have enough money to do anything, so let's keep things small. Let's do things on the cheap because we have to. And because of that, they would often come out with a stylish, wonderful movie like this one is.
Yes.
So I'm keeping to the name. We're finally doing, after so many years, an actual B movie. So.
Well, this thing did start.
I love this. I love this particular movie. It's got a great cast and some interesting things about it. Like you said earlier, lots of twists, and we will try to avoid those.
Yes.
And
I have a question.
Oh, you have a question,
Are
Mary.
all film noirs really depressing at the end? Is that sort of like what makes a film noir?
No, some of them are, and some of them aren't. And a lot of the ones that aren't, it seems like they tagged on a happy ending.
Mm-hmm.
So in general, they're going for a little bit of depressing. And it's interesting that they would do that because it was a time when people were looking to be into escapism and all that. But at the same time, I think there's another group, another part of the audience that wants to feel that this is touching on my life. This reminds me of me and where I'm at, or something. Because there's a lot of, even today, you see a lot of happy-go-lucky movies where everything ends happily, and there's a hell of a lot of depressing movies that are just like, why did anyone make this? Who's going to want to watch this? It's just so depressing.
True.
But and I think with the film noir though. I know you again, we're not going to talk about the ending. I don't think it was the saddest ending in the world, but it was a strange ending.
True.
It was.
Because it didn't, there was a character that was just kind of like thrown away, which was strange. So without getting into spoiling it.
Yes.
But for the most part, they usually have a somewhat of a satisfying. There's a satisfaction. Because, the production code at the time was, crime always doesn't pay. Crime doesn't pay. So the bad guy always gets it in the end. Today's film, sometimes the bad guy does win, and then that's really depressing. It's like, well, there's a price. Sometimes the good guy has a price to pay, but, in the end, crime doesn't pay. So, And I think with this particular film, there's a blend. Like, it does start out in a certain depressing way, but there's also some almost humorous comedy moments in it.
Mm-hmm.
Then we mentioned the annoying kid, and that was kind of like inserting some comic aspect to it, and
that's
so
true.
And there was a lot of snappy dialogue between Marie Windsor and Charles McGraw's character. It was, they had some snappy dialogue. So there's like a blend of emotions, a blend of different tones in the movie, and it kind of ends up, even with all its twists and really, this is how this worked out. It has kind of like a sense of realism to it at the same time, because it's not just one tone. There's funny things that are happening, and there's sad things that are happening. And there's action, and there's quiet moments, so it's a blend.
Was that why Howard Hughes changed that first cop, his character, the heavy guy? What was his name?
The first guy.
You're talking about Sergeant Gus Forbes, played by Don Bedo.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I read somewhere where the original screenplay had him as a corrupt cop, and Howard Hughes didn't want that, so he changed it. Is it because of the code at the time, or was it because of Howard Hughes?
I think it would be Howard Hughes probably didn't want it to look, maybe he was cutting out some of the bleakness. I don't think the code would have at that point, because there's a lot of film noirs that do have that bleakness, and that just about every cop's corrupt and all that. So I don't think it's something that they put on them. I think it was something that he wanted, to not make the audience just depressed through the whole movie, type of thing.
Okay. Well, I'm really glad he didn't do those reshoots with
Robert Mitchum
and Russell. What's her name?
Yeah. I think it would have been a different movie
Jane
if they'd
Russell.
done that, among other things. Although I could see Mitchum stepping into, the Detective Brown role.
Yeah.
But Charles McGraw was just really good in it.
I know. I think it was better with B actors and actresses, lesser known.
Yeah. And it's interesting. he just seems like he'd be a perfect heavy, but he played a combination of roles throughout his career, and some of them films are even surprising. It's like I can't imagine him being in Spartacus, for example, as a Greek guy. But
I know.
But he was. And I just saw, and it was funny. I just saw him in a Western, and I thought, oh, this is gonna be a good Western, because he was just like this hulking guy looking for the gunfighter, and he got that gravelly voice going. And I'm thinking, oh, he's in this movie. This is gonna be a good one. But then he gets killed like in the first 5 minutes of the movie. But he did his thing. I mean, he made his impact in the first 5 minutes, and then he gets shot right at the beginning of the movie. It's like, oh, he's gone already. But yeah, he's in the margin. Not to use a pun here with the title of the film, but he's in the margin of many films. He's not really a leading character in most films that he's in, but when he is there, whether he's a heavy or a tough cop, he brings something to the movie. He's got a charisma that, and in this one, he really gets to shine. I mean, this has to be his best role that he has in his career.
And it's funny because I think he was, I want to say, the optimism of the film. You know, because you have that banter between the two cops there at the beginning, and as they're driving to pick up their target, the woman that they're going to be escorting, and Brown, McGraw's character is just and Forbes, Don Beto, he is very much just upbeat and very happy. He's jovial, might be a better way to put it.
Yeah. And
we see where that gets him, because it is a film noir, but at the same time, I think that was a good deal for us, a couple of reasons, and I think the biggest one to me was that it really did set the tone for the film.
Yeah.
It's like you see this positive influence, this jovial guy, the happy uncle type character, and he gets laid out within the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
Which they had to do within the first 5 minutes, because as we keep mentioning, it was a short film. So
there's an arc in the movie as well with Charles McGraw's character, because we see he goes through a tragedy with the death of his partner, and then he's like on a revenge kick, like he's angry about that, and he mentions a couple of times, about the widow and the orphans that this killing has left behind. But there's a certain point. One of the major plot points is that they're trying to corrupt him. And he actually shows a level of that, he's not just like some super cop that he's incorruptible. He shows a little bit of signs of temptation, that he's tempted, he's weak, and he even expresses, I've been tempted. But he's of course he's going to stick it out. He is the hero, but you get that sense that and one of the things the screenwriters just really put together a nice tight package, a nice tight film, but really give you a character arc that is kind of uncommon for a B movie, where you're really seeing a conflict within the character. It was very interesting.
That's why I don't think Rod Mitchum would have been as good, because I think of him as being a hard-nosed, plowing through, fighting. It would have been more of an action picture with him in it, I think. This way it was more of a character study.
And I think with Mitchum, because he comes in, and in 52, he's coming in with a reputation based on his other roles, that it would have been, I think it would have been harder to accept him being tempted by the corruption.
Exactly, yeah.
So with McGraw, he's kind of an unknown factor. Well, we've seen him here. He was a bad guy in this movie. He was a tough cop in this movie, but he hasn't really had a starring role. And as a viewer, it's like, you don't really know this guy. Yeah. And so it becomes more believable, the arc that he goes through.
I felt really bad. I read that he died in his home in Studio City, California, because he slipped in his bathroom and fell through the glass shower door, and it severed an artery, and he bled to death. But it resulted in California making a state law requiring that doors be made out of safety glass. But I would love to have seen what he would have done after.
Maybe if they'd had a safety glass shower door, you would have got to see what he would have done after, Mary.
I know. It's a shame. Well, he was in Cold Blood. He was in The Birds. He was in the Mad, 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 Mad World. I don't remember him in any of those.
Yeah, and again, those are all movies where he would obviously have a small role, like his role in The Birds, which is supposedly his most popular film on the film guide I use. But it's I can't remember. It's got to be in the gas station sequence. He's just a bit player in there.
I was going to say I could see him having been the gas station attendant that was there,
or someone. There's a scene inside of a cafe or a restaurant.
Yeah,
and I've seen like that's where he would be. And if he was in It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, he's just with 100 other
that's true.
actors. So yeah, and and he didn't die too young, and he was in films up through the 80s and all. But and again, it's like you can't remember him. You wouldn't know him to see him, type of thing. But once you see this movie, you'll look for him in other movies. And it's like, oh, he was in that. I'm going to watch that again and see what did he do in that, because I don't remember him in that. But,
seriously.
It's like I said, that one Western movie I just saw, it was like, oh, this would be a good one. Charles McGraw.
Which one was it? War Paint?
Was
it War Paint or Thunder Over the Plains?
He did more Westerns than that, Mary.
Well, those are the two.
He did a lot of Westerns.
Two really big ones that I could think of.
He was in Hang 'em High.
He was?
Yes, he played one of the sheriffs.
Okay.
But, okay, guys, I did find out he was Sebastian Scholes, a fisherman in the diner in The Birds.
Okay.
So there you go. You nailed it, Kenny. He was one of the guys in the diner.
Yeah. He's in
the Bridges. I got that. That's kind of in my head, that scene. It's like, where is he at? That's where it had to be. And I seem to remember him. And he probably has like 2 lines when they did that. So
yeah.
Well, he's in the Bridges of Toko-Ri, but that was like an ensemble thing too. So, yeah, I'm good. He was in A Boy and His Dog.
Yes.
I don't remember him in that.
He's a preacher.
That's a classic.
He was the preacher.
Cult movie. Yeah.
I don't remember.
And it's like, oh, he's in that. I'm going to watch that again because what did he do in that?
He was the preacher.
Yeah.
Which I think is the preacher that shows up in the town that Jason Robards runs, like the underground city where they're going to have him have Don Johnson be the sire, I guess, for the next generation of kids.
I don't remember that movie at all.
Well, Mary, maybe you need to go back and watch it again.
There's so many movies I have to go back and watch again.
Well, just remember, it has a boy and his dog.
Okay, so the film that I'm talking about, the Western I'm talking about, and it is a good Western. I gave it 3.5 stars in my watch. I just saw it just recently. It's called Saddle in the Wind. Saddle the Wind. And it has Robert Taylor, John Cassavetes, Donald Crisp, a very good role in it, and Charles McGraw. He's high up on the cast list, but he's very short time in the movie. But it's a very interesting, and it's a brother versus brother story, a very good Western, colorful. And I recommend that too, Saddle the Wind. And again, that's one of those films. And I'm looking at Charles McGraw's list. It's like, I've seen a lot of movies with him in it.
I know.
But I couldn't tell you what he did in them. But it makes you want to go back and see, was he a tough guy? Was he a cop? Was he a bad guy? What did he do in this movie? Spartacus. He had to become some kind of Roman soldier or something. I don't know. I can't imagine him being a senator
I think
in
he was
Greece,
a grandfather.
or Rome. So.
He played the grandfather of somebody.
And for the monster kids out there, he was in the Mad Ghoul and the Undying Monster, early 40s films. So he did have a pretty long career as well. He was deep into the 80s before he passed.
Yep.
So another interesting person when you look into their credits is the director, and the direction in this movie is something else.
Oh yeah.
Again, the movie takes place for the most part in a train, and you really get a sense of the claustrophobic aspect of it. In fact, one of the characters is fat. That's his word for it, folks.
Yeah.
It says, his saying was, "No one likes a fat man except his grocer and his tailor." And there was a couple scenes where it's and that's again where that tone it changes. There's like a comic scene where Charles McGraw has to get around him, and it's almost like a slapstick scene.
Yeah.
Getting through these narrow, and sometimes there's some handheld camera work, which was rare for that time.
That was incredible.
A lot of claustrophobia in the film, and it's like they weren't on a sound stage cut in half. It was like you felt like they were in a train.
Mm-hmm.
Another part that really impressed me and it stuck with me for a long time, and it's my favorite part in the movie is there's a fight inside a men's room inside the train.
Yeah.
And that fight was just so well done, brutal. And the close-ups, and they're using their feet, they're grabbing, and it looks like a real fight. This is what people really fight like. It reminds me of one of my favorite fight scenes in all of cinema history, and that's the train fight from Russia with Love with James Bond, Sean Connery versus Robert Shaw, which is an incredibly edited and fantastic fight. And this fight in this film, I feel like there was some inspiration there because it had that same kind of feel. It was a little bit shorter than the James Bond fight, but it had that intensity and that, man, we're in a tight space. How do you fight somebody in this tight space? And I really,
there's one.
So the director is Richard Fleischer.
Yeah.
And he did, and when you look at his credit list, he did 53 films.
Yeah.
And it's just, he did everything. He did every kind of film you can imagine. He did a lot of the noirs, a lot of the early noirs, but he did westerns. And then later on, he did some classics for the movie cast people, like Fantastic Voyage.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yep, the Disney film.
Yeah.
Which is made of people.
And another one that I thought, is just to show that he was like of great, he was a man to go to if he can do it all. He's a competent director. He's not overly stylish in all of his movies. You can't say, well, he's like Alfred Hitchcock or someone like that.
He's not
you can say he has a certain style. But you could say, hey, we need you to do this movie. And that movie is Tora, 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 which is one of those gigantic war movies, which was incredible. And this is no CGI. The attack on Pearl Harbor is just incredible. And the fact that he drew that all together, because he's working with a Japanese cast and an American cast, and the Japanese cast is speaking in Japanese. And, I think he might have had a Japanese co-director. But to be able to put that all together, again, shows his versatility.
Yeah.
And then in the end of his time, the end of his career, he did films. Listen to this lineup. The Jazz Singer, with Neil Diamond. Amityville 3D. Conan the Destroyer, the second Conan film, which I like better than the first. Forgive me for that. And Red Sonja, So he did it all. He had a great career. He did it all, but I feel like you can see here in this film just visions of that. He knew what he wanted, and he took a small budget and a small set and made it work.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing, there's some scenes where there's a car that's kind of following the train,
Mm-hmm.
and how they use the reflections of that, and there's certain scenes where it's like he shows that they're seeing the car, but it's with reflections. It's not like, oh, we're going to look out the window. Oh, there's the car. No, you're looking at the person looking at the car, but you see the car and the reflection of the train.
Yeah.
There's like little moments like that really made us like, that stuck out to me on this viewing, my latest viewing of it. Just like, wow, this is, that's a detail that, and with the budget they had, that wasn't the easiest thing to do. You have a moving train, a moving car, and you have the reflection. Is that a special effect? Did they use optical printing to do that? Or how did they do that type of thing? And you would think, well, they didn't have a big budget to do special effects, but
you're right.
There was things like that.
Yeah, they didn't film on a train.
Mm-hmm.
It was all a set.
There's a key scene where there's using reflections, and the guy's using the reflection to see where the bad guy is.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, and there's the directorial touches. Just and that made me think, well, who is this guy? And again, I look at the list and it's like, man, I've seen a lot of his movies, and there's a ton of different kinds of movies.
Yes.
The guy was not limited to just film noir or thrillers.
Well, didn't they bring him into a lot of films where they fired the director halfway through and they'd bring him in to finish the film?
I don't know. I couldn't confirm that, yes or no, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
Because he would be the kind of person
yeah.
That they could rely on.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
This guy made a mess of this. Can you come and fix it? Sure.
Yeah.
So, and that's a good way to be sometimes. And looking at his list of films, I appreciate his career. Oh. Some of them are kind of, well, I don't know about this one, but for the most part, he did some fine films. You could see that he has some flourishes, but he's not super stylistic, but he's good at what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And in this movie, it really shows.
He had an autobiography in 1993 called Just Tell Me When to Cry. I think I'd like to read that. Because, his father was Max Fleischer, the animator that did all those really great, he was the other studio, not the Disney studio. He was the one doing the other ones like Betty Boop and Popeye and Superman. He did those kind of cartoons. That was his father. So I've read that his L.A. mansion had a pool in the shape of Mickey Mouse's head. And I love that because his dad was like his arch enemy, was Disney's arch whatever rival. But Disney did end up hiring him, starting with 2,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So I guess he did have some Disney.
I'm saying about that autobiography, I gotta look and see if I can find that.
I was going to say that would be an interesting read.
I know, because I'm sure he's talking about his dad and the animation studios back in the old days when I think his dad invented the rotoscope.
I think some of like the Superman cartoons, they seem to have that rotoscope quality to it sometimes.
Yeah.
Where they're tracing over actors, they're drawing over the actors.
Yeah, so that would be a good book to read.
Now we got another one to add to the library.
I know. One more thing.
To read. What about Marie Windsor?
Woo-hoo!
Oh, Lord have mercy!
She is so sexy. It's amazing.
B for B movies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And she's sassy in this movie, really sassy.
She is super duper fun in this. She gives as good as she gets from the start.
I know.
And we just have to do a part 2 if we're not going to spoil anything, because her character has such an arc in this film.
Yeah.
Go watch it, folks. You'll love it, and you can talk to it with your significant other, because we're not going to talk about it. But it is just it's interesting, it's surprising, and a lot of fun. And it's like it's totally unexpected.
Yeah.
Based on what her character is doing throughout the film and the way she is, but that's again that tone or that humor where she's asking for breakfast, and I want my breakfast. I want my bacon crisp and my toast with a lot of butter.
And a bucket of
Charles
coffee.
McGraw is not having any of it,
Yeah.
So
She reminds me of a lot of the
cheese sandwich.
Yeah. She reminds me a lot of the Mexican movie stars of that era. She has that quality to her. I don't know what it is. Some foreign, intriguing, ingenue kind of quality.
But she was another actress who did a lot of different types of films, a lot of westerns. She was in another very good noir called Force of Evil, which I recommend. She was in The Sniper. And she was in a misunderstood classic, Catwomen of the Moon. She had a pretty significant role in that, if I remember correctly.
I have got to see that.
Then she went on to do The Killing with Stanley Kubrick. So
yeah,
she was available for just about anything.
Yeah, and she did a lot of television later on. She was in Hawaiian Eye, Perry Mason, Bourbon Street Beat, Rawhide, Adam 12 Mannix, Charlie's Angels, General Hospital. I mean, she was in so much stuff on television.
You forgot she was also in Simon and Simon.
Was she?
Yeah. Sorry, I just had to throw that in because anytime somebody's in Simon and Simon, I like to call it out.
Oh. Is there a reason why?
Because Simon and Simon were not brothers in real life, only on television. And see, you guys did not get that reference at all, but somebody listening will. And the first one that writes in and tells me where that reference was from, I'm going to send them a prize.
Wow.
And it may not even suck. No guarantees. It may be a used copy of Eat Me, a zombie musical, but it could be a special edition DVD of the Thing, John Carpenter, 1982. Who knows what Nick will fish out of his box of movies?
Somebody better write in and tell me what that reference is.
Yeah,
I'm gonna listen back when you put this out. I'm gonna listen because I was not exactly paying attention and see if I can figure it out because I want that thing. I want that thing.
Yeah, she guys, you can get the thing. All right.
She was in some other B movie cast classics like Abbott and Costello Meet the Mummy, and the TV movie, one of the great classic horror TV movies, Salem's Lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I don't remember her in that at all, and I love that.
I don't know. Let's see how deep she is in the cast here.
Wasn't she the owner of the boarding house?
Pretty deep down.
Okay.
Eva Miller, and she's pretty low on the cast list. She's after Fred Willard. So, so I don't know how big her role was, but she was in that
boarding house where the author was living during the movie.
Okay, that makes sense. She was a former Miss Utah, and she was a model for the cheesecake illustrator Vargas. Remember the Vargas paintings?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that too.
Yeah.
And, one of the things I think she said that she never had the look to be a leading lady because she always looked a little bit like a scoundrel.
Really?
Yeah. And
she does kind of have that, like I said, that glint in her eye.
Exactly. That's the thing. She couldn't play the swooning love interest easily.
Yeah, she wasn't soft and sweet.
Exactly. So, she tended to get the more interesting roles, I might say. She wasn't a damsel in distress as much as she was the distress for a damsel.
Yeah. Well, she was 5'9", which was really tall for a woman back in those days.
Yeah, now slap some heels on her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she never did a movie with Alan Ladd, that's for sure. I think he was 5'5", so you would have to have two soapboxes to stand on to do a movie with her.
I was reading a story where she was in one movie and she's walking towards the camera with her co-star, and he was shorter than her. So she started out with kind of her knees bent, and as they're walking towards the camera, she had to bend her knees more and more and more so that she wouldn't get taller than her male co-star.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that would be
See,
rough.
I would have just thought they would have thrown her, had him walk a couple of feet ahead of her.
Well, yeah, they could have, or
yeah,
built a plank for her to walk down.
There. It worked for The Hobbit.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Peter Jackson did a whole lot of forced perspective stuff in the Lord of the Rings movies. Yeah, they used some CGI and stuff, but a lot of that was just good old-fashioned forced perspective.
Oh. Okay, that explains a lot.
Does it, Mary?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
They did really well. Well, it's like the Harry Potter movies where they have, what was his name? The big...
Hagrid?
Hagrid, yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, they just had that actor become 9 feet tall.
Okay.
What? They do that all the time in movies. They give them a pill.
Okay. I'm not falling for that one, Nick.
I know you're not, but that's all right, Mary.
Oh.
Well, what about some of the other folks that were in this movie? Because she was great, but I tell you, I was surprised by Jacqueline White. And what surprised me about her was that I hadn't seen her in more movies.
I know.
You know, I think this might have been her last film, actually.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, and, you know, it's like, oh, wow. Because I'm looking at her, and she had the look that says, you know, this could have been, you know, one of your leading ladies. And she just sort of disappeared out of the film industry.
Well, she got married to a guy who started an oil business, and they ended up living in Colorado.
Yeah, which doesn't tend to bode well for your film career.
Yeah. Yeah. I think didn't she come back to do this movie, and then she married him, came back for this movie, and then completely quit the business.
Yep, that's...
I'm saying she only did 22 films, and one of them was another noir called Crossfire, which is a pretty good one. With Robert
and I'm not saying she didn't have a long career. It's just when I saw her, I was thinking, I've seen her in other films after this, and that was definitely not the case, because this was the last film.
Yeah.
Well, here's something interesting. One film that I saw recently, it's called Banjo. It's like a family drama. It's a dog, like a dog movie, a dog and his girl, or a girl and her dog. And the director of that film from 1947 was Richard Fleischer.
Oh.
68 minutes long. Also has one of my favorite Universal actresses, Una O'Connor, the screaming lady of Bride of Frankenstein and Invisible Man.
Yes.
And she was the mother of Sharon Moffat in that film. And I think Sharon Moffat, the girl that comes to... Yeah, she was a regular attender. I think she passed away just recently. But she lived in Pittsburgh and came to the Bash often.
Really?
Sharon Moffat, she was the girl that was in The Body Snatcher. And she was a heavy-set, older lady, but they invited her, they found her, invited her to the Bash. She said, I don't think anyone would want me to be anywhere. She was a child actress and hadn't made that many movies. And they brought her in, and she loved it. The fans loved her, and she was a perennial until she passed away just recently.
Wow.
So Jacqueline White was her mother in this movie Banjo, which was directed by director Richard Fleischer. So in a couple more steps, we'll get to Kevin Bacon on this one.
I think we might. Okay, one interesting fact, because I've looked up Jacqueline White, and she may still be alive.
There's no death date on her.
I think she's over 100 at this point.
Well, she's born in 22.
Yeah, but they've got her listed as not dead.
Wow.
So there you go. It's possible.
Wow.
I'm not holding my breath for it, by the way, guys. And if she is alive, I don't think she'll be coming to the bash. But
yeah. I hope it's not one of the situations where they find her, you know, like the Vickers girl from Attack of the 50-Foot Woman. They found her dead, you know. Rotting.
That's true.
Terrible. How do we get off on that rabbit trail? Sorry about that.
Wow, we've gone down a dark hole, and we need to go back.
All right. I didn't recognize anyone else really from the cast. I have to go and see. Oh well, I saw a couple of his movies and a couple there, but there's no big names.
I thought I recognized Paul Maxey, the heavyset guy on the train that was always getting stuck in the corridors.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't him. I mean, he looks like somebody that I don't know who it is that he looks like, but there's somebody that he looks like.
Okay, so basically we need to find a search engine that would allow you to go, this guy, who looks like this guy?
Yeah. Well, he kind of looks like Alfred Hitchcock a little bit to me.
If Alfred Hitchcock were less cynical and more jolly.
Yeah. He just has a very recognizable face to me, but it's not him. He's not who I thought he was, put it that way.
And these aren't the droids you're looking for.
But I did enjoy it.
No,
his character was great. I really liked it. The kid.
Yeah, the kid. Yeah, the kid.
The kid.
That's all you had to say was the kid.
The kid.
That kid was more annoying than any 3 kids I've seen in a movie recently.
I know. I so wanted to smack him many times in this movie.
And I thought it was interesting at the same time that how Charles McGraw's character, you would think he would not be as
nice to him.
Tolerant?
Nice to him. Eventually got to him that he was like, end up being his friend when it was like, this kid's a pain.
I know.
Especially when they had to carry him out of the one train car and into another car. And he's extremely annoying, but he eventually became his friend. And I don't think there are kids that are that annoying in the world, but I kind of like that little arc that they had in there where it started out like he's going to take out his gun and shoot this kid, and in the end, they're the best buddies.
He
handled that. The character handled the kid well in the end, so I appreciated that.
Mm-hmm. I would have probably thrown him off the train.
Well, and here's the thing. The kid kept going, and he's got a gun, and he's a robber, and all this, and kept
he felt it
to him.
I felt it under his arm.
Yeah, it's like, he's got a gun. Mama, he's a robber. Ah!
He was so annoying.
Yeah, and by the way, that kid was played by an actor named Gordon Gebert.
Yeah.
And Gebert, he was a child actor, and he acted up until 1960. So he pretty much hung his hat on being a child actor, and then he started doing some of the teenage angst movies later on. And then, I think his last movie was appropriately named Teenage Conflict. So... Which, if that kid stayed the way he was, definitely would be conflict.
Wow, he went to MIT, then he graduated with a bachelor's degree in architecture, then he went to Princeton, where he got his master's. Then he taught at Princeton for a year. Wow.
Yes.
No wonder he never went back to acting.
Well...
He was a success story, when most of those child actors
That's true.
Lost their way.
True.
Made good.
I was going to say, this one did not lose his way, which I think has as much to do with the fact that he wasn't a celebrity child actor. He was just a player type actor. You know, he wasn't the star of the Mickey Mouse Club. You know, he wasn't doing the, the beach blanket bingo movies in the 60s, things like that. He wasn't one of the kids on The Facts of Life or, Different Strokes or something later, A lot of those kids get too much fame too early, and it just does not go well for them.
It's true. It's true. I thought
Looking right at you, Danny Bonaducci.
I thought another actor was really good, and this was David Clark, the guy that gets beat up in the bathroom.
Oh, yeah.
Man.
Well, he played a good heavy.
Yeah, I really didn't like him.
Well, that's what you're not supposed to like him, Mary.
Exactly.
He's the heavy.
I know. Yeah, he was good.
Although what I thought was interesting about him was, while he was the heavy that you saw the most, he wasn't the true villain of the movie.
I know.
There was a lot of sinister stuff going on in that movie.
Yeah,
I liked it.
I know.
And it's a kind of movie too that in a couple days, if someone will come and tell me what this movie's about, it's hard to put it together in your mind. It's fun to watch and it makes sense, but at the same time, it's so somewhat convoluted in its plotting and what actually happens and everything. And it's like, this is, I think, my fourth viewing of the film, and it was I was like, okay, I think I know what's gonna happen. I think I remember it, and it was still surprising to me, So whether that's me having senior moments or the power of the film, it does have that. And it reminds me, there's another film that I just couldn't. There's another noir film called Out of the Past. Very famous noir film. It has Kirk Douglas and Robert Mitchum in it, and it has the same kind of story where it's like, I can't tell you what it's about, but it's there. And there's some noir films that have that quality, and this might be taking from that because this is a later noir in the early 50s. The great ones from the 40s might have been inspired this as well. The kind of convoluted plot to it, fascinating. It's not like the crazy Marvel movies we talked about earlier that don't make any sense. It makes sense, but at the same time, it's just like, what? And you kind of have to watch it again and again to be able to remember exactly what happens.
Well, yeah, and again, I have to go back to this. The movie is 71 minutes long.
I know.
I mean, it's ridiculously short for all of the twists and turns. They really were very effective at packing a whole lot of plot into a very small package.
Mm-hmm. And it goes so fast that it's amazing. It's like you start watching it and suddenly it's over.
I wish they'd learned how to do this today.
I know.
Especially in the movies.
I know.
But man, it's just like, the movies are so long. And when you watch a movie like this, that's just a good way to sit down for 71 minutes and have a good time and enjoy a movie and be surprised and shocked and excited. And you don't need 3 hours of explanation to if you need to take 3 hours to tell a story, your story is too long.
Because it's more of a character study than a story.
Mm-hmm.
They just
that's it. And there are some very distinct arcs for the main characters in this.
Yeah.
So, which is nice, you get some character development. There's a little bit of growth and, a whole lot of a kid needing to be smacked and,
I just found my notes on Max Fleischer, the director.
Yeah.
Okay. He replaced other directors on at least 5 pictures. His Kind of Woman, he replaced John Farrow. The Last Run, he replaced John Huston. Mandingo, he replaced Michael Campus. Ashanti, he replaced Richard Serafian. And The Jazz Singer, he replaced Sidney J. Furry. So for whatever reason, they got rid of the director of those movies, and he took over. Probably because he just
he's reliable.
Get along with them or something.
Well, at the end of the day, somebody who can just show up and turn out a good movie,
yeah,
that's pretty powerful in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Just being able to step in and save something where the studios put a bunch of money into it, but it wasn't working out because there were issues with the director.
Mm-hmm.
That happens quite a lot when the director's vision clashes with what the studio wants.
That's probably
what the producers want.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's with what the actors want.
Yeah. Did you ever see his 1958 movie, The Vikings? I'm curious about that one.
I think that's a pretty good movie. It's a costumer. I think is it the one with Tony Curtis in it?
I want to say it is.
Okay.
And it's a pretty good movie.
I always get that one confused. There was another one that had like Lee Majors or something in it, and I can't remember, but I get them confused. Yeah, there was a Viking movie that had Lee Majors in it. Leave me alone.
Really?
It had Kirk Douglas and Tony Curtis and Ernest Borgnine and Janet Leigh. Great cast. And from 1958, so 6 years after this. And I saw this pretty recently, and I really enjoyed it. It's a good costumer.
Oh, okay, good.
Cool.
That looks interesting.
Another interesting thing about this movie, and again, if you had asked me beforehand about this, I would have not remembered this. At the very beginning of the film, it had the RKO symbol. But it didn't have the beep, 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 beep that we know from King Kong and every other RKO movie. It was just the sound of a train going. Then the movie started, and it was just the sound of the train.
Oh.
And if you notice the whole movie, there is not any soundtrack music. There is a little bit of music that Marie Windsor's character plays on a little phonograph, but there's no music in this movie. And it works. Fantastic.
Yes.
And you don't. You sound surprised. You just watch the movie, you sound surprised, and it is. It's like, it's not one of those kind of movies that's like this movie needs a soundtrack. There needs to be some music here because it's constantly moving. And also, again, whether this is a directorial flourish or the sound men, but they use the train sound at times. They bring it out and use it as part of the soundtrack. Like there's a point where Marie Windsor's filing her nails, and she is filing her nails at the rhythm of the locomotive.
Yeah.
And they transition from her filing her nails, and she's going, and then they switch to locomotive, and it's making that same rhythm, that same sound. So there's some interesting sound aspects of this film. And again, it's one of those, watch it again and just notice that there's no music, but there is constant sound. It's really bringing out the sound of the train. And it's pretty interesting. Even when you think, oh, there's going to be a stinger here, bah, or there's going to be some, music, crime movie music. When they're not on the train, there is no music except a little incidental music that's played by Marie Windsor's character. Interesting and very unique. Was it because they didn't have a budget for the music score? Was it a directorial decision? I did not research it enough to know, but I thought that was kind of interesting, especially for the 50s. Where they're constantly smashing you with music in the movies.
I think it really helped. Because
I'm going to say, I think it was a choice because, this was an RKO picture. They had license for a whole lot of music. And there was canned music for that kind of movie, exactly like you said, the stingers and that sort of thing. So, yeah, it's very possible that they just didn't have, or that they made an artistic choice about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that.
And it works. And again, on a fourth viewing of it, it really stood out to me but in a good way, where it's like, oh wow, they're really using that. And I was like, wait a minute, this from the very beginning, it's like, wait a minute, that's not the RKO theme, that's some train. I don't remember this. And then it's like, wait a minute, there's no music. Where's the music for this? The opening? It's just the sound of a train. And it's like, oh, okay, didn't remember this.
I think it really helps with the claustrophobia feel.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that is what it. When you're in a train, that sound is constant. Mm-hmm. You get used to it. You have to get used to it. And in the movie, that's the only sound there is. And there's no music. There's just that chukka 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 chukka. I thought that was interesting.
I love that everything was fixed to the floor, the train sets, and they moved the camera to make it look like the train was rocking. And they did that so well because you really got that feeling that you were on a train rocking, unstable, which, then the train sound made you feel unstable and kind of just built, I don't know, a feeling in you while you're watching the movie that something's going to happen. It's kind of like an itch. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah,
and there's no getting away. There's the idea of the film, and as Nick goes through the synopsis, we'll get a sense of this. But the concept of the film is there's people want someone dead, and there's no way of them getting away from that. They're stuck in a train, in a moving train.
Constant clickety clack.
Yep. And that adds to the suspense. It adds to the, how are they going to get out of this? How is this going to work? What's going to happen? Mm-hmm. It adds a lot to the film's tension and interest as well.
I can't believe they shot the film in 13 days. That's just unreal.
It took them so long
to finally release it.
Well, no, I was making a joke about how short the filming time was, but yeah, that too.
I mean, and he shot it in order, from what I heard.
Well, and now that is unusual because most of the time, the way you shoot a movie is you do all of your scenes at a particular location or a particular set, and then you move to the next one.
And this was all one set, so...
Yeah, so I guess it wasn't that hard. And if you think about it, if you've got a big set for a train, so you have certain cars, right? So you just go ahead and have all the lighting set up there. Mm-hmm. So it isn't that hard to move from one part of the set to another if the lighting is all set up and everything else. So... because that's half of the problem with moving to different locations is just resetting all of the equipment.
Yeah.
That's why you got to pay them grips a lot of money.
And I love when they get off the train got on the platform to get those sandwiches and go to the telegraph office, and you just couldn't make this movie nowadays because everybody have a cell phone and it'd be instantaneous. I liked the way when the train was running, there was this guy with a hook and he grabbed the messages from the train.
Well, that was how they did it.
I know, but I never thought of that before, and I saw that and I went, wow. Because then the guy had to take the message and take it to a telegraph office someplace.
And it was interesting. It was neat that they showed that because if in our day, it's like, well, he's sending a message. How is that going to help him?
Yeah.
And they showed you, here's how he's getting the messages.
Yeah.
Oh, he's asking, tell me about these people, and then down with a telegram, and then down the road he gets the message. It's like, well, how do they do that? You know, and we get to see it, and that's kind of cool.
That is.
And we get to see how they do it.
Yeah.
Well,
okay. Also,
any other parts about the movie we want to talk about, or do we want to go ahead and try and get into the synopsis without giving away any too much?
This was RKO's biggest moneymaker of 1952. Which is amazing when you think about it. How many movies are made?
I'm pretty sure it was a B feature, so it wasn't like they were touting it as the primary feature. So I don't know how they would determine that, or people were going to see it instead of the main feature.
I don't know.
I didn't investigate to that depth to see did it play with some other movie, but my impression from Eddie Mohler's introduction was that this was a true B movie, which is the shorter feature on a double bill, which most films were at that time in the 50s. Everything was a double bill.
Well, TCM calls it a nervous A because it was a cut above the usual B picture.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to throw one thought out there. You said it was their biggest film or their most profitable film?
Their biggest, I'm reading this off of IMDb, RKO's biggest moneymaker of 1952.
Okay, biggest moneymaker might mean that it was their most profitable film.
Yeah.
And I could see that because you think about it. If you spend $1 million making a movie and it makes $2 million, that's, 100% profit. If you spend $100,000 making a movie and it makes $1 million, you've just had 1,000% profit.
And they only spent $188,000 on this.
See?
Or anywhere between $188,000 to $230,000.
Well, my point is there's a couple of ways you can look at how successful a film is. You've got a movie like the latest Avatar movie, whatever, that cost $300 million to make. Yeah. That thing better bring in $1 billion. But you turn around and you have a little movie, and I'm trying to think of a good little movie that's made a lot of money recently. How about, the Halloween movies? Those are not overly expensive films to make. Those are $30-40 million films, and they're pulling in $100 million. So your profitability can be ranked based on just how much money did you have to put in to get that good return.
Well, but Kenny has a good point. How do they, since it played with an A film, how did they know how much money they made on just this film?
That's
a good point.
That's a good point. And I don't know. Thinking about, okay, fine. Kenny's logic has completely derailed my thought on it, so we're just going to let it go. So, Mary, why did you even bring up how much money this film made?
Because I thought that was an interesting stat. I do not know where they got it from. Because it's IMDb and they don't show
Well, everybody knows IMDb is never wrong.
Yeah, right.
That, by the way, was sarcasm. IMDb gets a lot of stuff wrong. Yes. You got to pay attention to them.
This is interesting. I just saw this, and I don't know, again, the source is dubious, but it was nominated for Best Writing.
Yes.
Motion Picture Story.
I could see that.
And I was fascinated by the writing. The writer was Earl Felton.
Mm-hmm.
Interested to see what else he's done, because it was an interesting story and a lot of good, snappy dialogue, which is one of my favorite aspects of film noir, is the repartee between the femme fatale and the detective.
Those dialogue
all that kind of
scenes.
stuff. That's what makes it fun. And they with the production code, of course, it had to be clean, but they had to sneak in the double entendres and all that to make it gritty. And I just love when a good screenwriter gets a hand on a film like that and is able to do. And I think this is a good example of that as well.
Okay, Felton wrote 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And he wrote Armored Car Robbery, The Felony Squad, His Kind of Woman, although he's uncredited in that. Isn't that a noir? His Kind of Woman?
I haven't seen it, so I have no idea.
Seems like it's
doesn't
a film.
Not familiar to me, the name as a noir.
Okay. My Best Gal, he did the screenplay. Sunset Serenade, he did the screenplay.
Well, obviously he wrote some movies, Mary.
Yeah, he did.
All right.
Okay. I'm done. I don't think I have anything else. I just love the camera work and the lighting in it. It just so made me feel like I was on a train. A train that I wanted to get off of. Especially when the kid started running around the house screaming with his Indian headdress on.
It's good. It made you want to get off the train.
Mm-hmm.
And you only had to be on it 71 minutes. They were on a cross-country trip.
Yeah.
That's true.
We only had to watch 71 minutes of it.
That's true. It was, God, how many days did that take? I think it was like 2 days or something.
I don't know.
And it would depend on the stops, too, because you had to make stops. So.
Well, they only stopped for 12 minutes that one time.
I like that. 12 minutes. You have exactly 12 minutes. Why just 12 minutes? Just make it 15, make a nice round number.
Nope, 12 minutes. Deal with it. All right. So, you ready for the synopsis minus the spoiler busts?
Good luck on that one.
This should be the shortest synopsis ever.
Well, the movie's only 71 minutes long, as we keep repeating, so it doesn't need that much. But, okay, so the movie centers around this lady, Frankie Neal, and that was Mary Windsor, being a witness for the prosecution. She's got to go to the grand jury, and she's got a payoff list that shows which cops and which officials in L.A. are corrupt. And, she's going to give up the evidence, and 2 cops have been assigned to protect her. Sergeant Walter Brown, and that was our man Charles McGraw, and his partner, who was Sergeant Gus Forbes, and that's Don Beto. And these guys, they're kind of, as I mentioned at the start of the cast when we were talking about this, Beto is Sergeant Forbes is much more upbeat and a happier fella. And you just feel like Detective Sergeant Walter Brown, McGraw's character, is just kind of beat down. He is just not a happy guy, and he just gets more and more unhappy. And, they show up at the hotel where they're picking this lady up, or I guess her apartment or whatever. And she immediately just lays into them. And, she's a lot, as you mentioned, Kenny, a lot of witty banter back and forth between them, a lot of snarky comments. And it's all going real well. And then they step out of her apartment, and she's fussing with her pearls, and her pearl necklace breaks. And this is such a good scene, because the whole time the 2 cops have been a little bit paranoid about hitmen being involved, because she's getting ready to turn state's evidence that's going to really put a cramp in the mob style with this payoff list, right?
Is her husband dead?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was dead. Okay. And that's why she is turning state's evidence, as it were, because now she's kind of a liability to the mob, would be the best way to put it. And so she's going to turn state's evidence, go into witness protection, and live a, life of religious fulfillment or whatever, and is going to put, a lot of the mob's business on the line, because if the grand jury and the police have this list of this bribe list, essentially, is what it is, who is on the take and who is not. And so that list, honestly, the list is probably more important than her testimony, because all they need are the names on the list, and they can use that to start investigating these officers. And if they're not guilty, well, that's fine. But if they are guilty, it'll be hard to hide it, if they're being looked at. So anyway, her necklace breaks, and some of the pearls, they're up on like the 3rd floor, and some of the pearls roll off the landing and fall all the way down to the 1st floor. And there's a guy who you really can't see very well in the shadows waiting down there, and he's got a gun. And by the way, can I just say, as a hitman, yeah, it was great that he was in the shadows and stuff. Maybe don't stand around with the gun just straight out in your hand when you're waiting for him to come down the stairs. It's a little bit obvious. But anyway, they start coming down the stairs, and they're almost to the bottom, and Gus is leading, and somebody comes out of an apartment that's right there but where the guy is standing, and he says, "Hey, what are you doing?" And this freaks the hitman out, and so the cop comes down, and the hitman shoots him, and he kills Gus. And that's kind of the end of our jolly old dude. He's out of it. And so McGraw goes chasing after the guy but isn't able to catch him. And I'm going to make a point. At that point, the first thing I thought was, he is not really good at protecting his witness, because he just left her standing there. If there were 2 hitmen, she'd have been dead, but that's beside the point. So anyway, the guy gets away. One of the witnesses, I think it's the guy that came out of the room, he is able to describe that the fella had a fur-trimmed collar on his coat. But that was about the only thing he noticed about him, other than the fact that the guy had a gun. So McGraw is super upset right now. His partner's been killed, but he has to get this woman on the train. He can't even wait around for the police to file a report. He's like, "You call the police and tell them I'm gonna wire them a statement later." Which I'm sure that went over really well with everybody. It's like, oh, okay, he's just going to leave and wire the statement, but he had a job to do. And so they get on the train, but he realizes that there's somebody watching them, and he can't quite put his finger on it. So he's like, okay, we're going to get on the train, and you get into this cabin and turn off the lights and just don't make a sound, don't move till I come. And then he is very obvious when he gets on the train and gets into his cabin and turns the lights on. And the idea is that he is going to distract them so that they won't know exactly which compartment she's in. And, it's a pretty good idea. And so they the train takes off, and
okay, wait, how come nobody knows what she looks like?
Okay, I'll be honest, that was a problem point for me in this.
Okay.
Because I kept thinking, wait a minute, she's a mob boss's widow.
Right, yeah.
But nobody knows what she looked like?
Yeah.
I mean, and it comes down later in this. You've got like I guess he's sort of like the consigliere for the mob. And he shows up on the train, and he doesn't know what she looks like.
I know.
And it's like, come on, these senior lieutenants in this organization did not know what the boss's woman looked like. Now, I'm going to say, for the sake of cinematic continuity, that maybe the mob boss wanted to keep her identity secret from everybody just to protect her.
I think that would be like the logical way to think about it, even though it's not explicitly said, but you get that idea that she is basically a regular housewife and a mother. She's rich enough to have a nanny for the child, but you don't get a sense that you know what? We're spoiling the movie right now.
No, it's all good. So
Okay, but the thing
idea-
is, I almost spoiled the movie,
Yeah.
but
I guess back in those
keep
days,
going.
too, women didn't.
I almost did
didn't-
it but there's two women in the film. You'll have to watch the movie to figure out what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is
back
what you're saying is interesting, and I think that is the point of them not knowing what she looks like.
Yeah.
When you see the end of the movie, you will understand and get it'll work it out in your head.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why they didn't know what she looked like, and it'll be something along those lines, like she wasn't involved with them. They didn't.
Yeah.
He kept them separated from his work.
Yeah, I'm thinking back in those days, too, men were like the man, and he had his job, and you weren't part of life. You weren't part of your husband's life back then. You were just the woman. You know, you were the wife, and you weren't. It wasn't like The Godfather was in the 1960s movies or 70s, whenever Godfather was made. It wasn't like the women had big parts. Maybe back then the women were just the women, and they kept out of the man stuff.
That's possible, and I think maybe it was a more deliberate choice by the mob boss. But again, we'll never know because we didn't write the movie, and they didn't include that information in there for us. But I am going to contradict you, though, Mary, because The Godfather, which was made in, I think, 1972, was set in 1946. So it would have been exactly the same time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it was set right at the end of World War II.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, literally, because Michael Corleone comes home from the war to attend his sister's wedding.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm a big fan of The Godfather.
I was gonna say, it's been so long
I
since
have
I
to
watched that.
I have to wet my beak with information about it when it comes on. But anyway, that was my terrible Marlon Brando impersonation.
Okay.
Which, by the way, that's the second podcast in a row Marlon Brando's come up. So thank you for that window, Mary. And Mary's like, what is he talking about? Because you don't remember that we had a whole discussion about Marlon Brando on the last podcast.
The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Yep.
Oh.
And I hear the crickets, but that's okay. So anyway, he does this trick to try and keep the gangster that he sees following him, and that's Joseph Kemp, and that was actor David Clark. He tries to keep him from knowing where exactly Mrs. Neal is. And it's funny because Kemp and, Brown, the detective, they both recognize each other for what they are. And they both, they're mortal enemies. They're going to, and more to the point, Brown really kind of wants to kill this guy, I think, or at least arrest him, because he's still really upset about his partner getting killed. And for his part, Kemp wants to find this woman because he knows that the organization's going to be really, really, really hurt by the information she's got. So Kemp actually gets the conductor and tells the conductor that he's left his briefcase somewhere in one of these berths. And so he gets the conductor to let him in to search the room for it. And then McGraw, his Detective Brown, he's got to talk fast to kind of get around letting the guy into the other berth, which is an adjoining room. Unfortunately, that kind of confirms for Kemp that she's going to be in the other room. So, and he does try to get in there, but he tells but Brown tells the conductor, hey, the room is empty. And you know what? I'm going to need to see you about getting a refund for it, blah, blah, blah. And he manages to push him on because he's trying not to let anybody, including the staff of the train, know that he is a detective and he's guarding a witness, because he doesn't know who to trust. Anybody could be on the take. And, it's kind of a funny little bit that's going on, because the fact that nobody knows who they can trust comes into play later in one of the things that I'm not going to spoil. So now, at this point, we run into a lot of different characters. We run into a lady named Mrs. Sinclair, who's kind of the polar opposite of Frankie Neal. She's blonde, she's very soft-featured, whereas Frankie Neal, she's a brunette and she's very hard-boiled. And there's a little bit of chemistry even going on between Sinclair and Brown, and he's trying not to screw that chemistry up, even though they're just strangers on a train. And at the same time, we also run into this little kid, and what an annoying little child, because he has to hide in their room briefly. And the kid's like, "You're a robber because I felt a gun under your coat." And at this point, I'm all for beatings, by the way, because that kid just was, wow, he was just awful. But anyway, we run into those guys. We also run into, this big fella on the train, and that's, oh God, what was his name? That was Paul Maxey, yeah. And he was playing Sam Jennings, who literally describes himself as a fat man on the train. And there is a comedic scene where McGraw's got to get around this guy, and he just can't. He has to suck it in and squeeze past him as best he can, and it's a fun little scene. But this is where not spoiling the plot does become difficult, because there are a lot of twists and turns that are going to happen. People aren't who you think they are, and that comes into play. We did talk about some of the bits, though, that are important, like the fact that a car is following the train at one point, and every time we see the car, we just see it as a reflection in the window. And that's pretty important. But I'm going to let it go at this point and just say a whole lot of cool stuff happens on this train, and you should watch the movie. Okay, so anything else to add to the synopsis?
Not to the synopsis, but I looked up the writer, Felton.
Yeah.
Because he just amazes me, because he did a lot of stuff with Fleischer, did a lot of collaborations with Fleischer. But
yeah.
Both of his legs were crippled by childhood polio, but he wouldn't use a wheelchair, so he got around using crutches or canes all the time.
Yeah.
But remember when, wasn't last week, I think it was the week before, or the podcast before, I gave away a movie called Profumo Affair?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd never heard of that movie, and I'd never heard of the Profumo Affair, but it was like, it took down the English government for a while. There were a lot of sex orgies involved with, a lot of high-ranking people and stuff.
Tell me more.
Felton, this guy, this writer, a woman named Christine Keeler wrote an autobiography called The Truth at Last, and she was talking about this Profumo affair. And she said that Felton, this writer, was working for the CIA at the time, and that he was getting confidential information from a guy named Stephen Ward, and he was, funneling it on to the CIA. But Edgar Hoover stated that Felton had taken part in sex orgies, and that involved all those people that were part of the Profumo affair. I just think that was really interesting, because we just gave away that movie like 2 podcasts ago, and I'd never heard of it, and now it popped up again.
Well, I'm just thinking that you've managed to bring sex orgies into this film noir. And I gotta say, that is impressive, Mary. Thank you.
You're welcome, Nick.
And, now I've got this
superheroes,
image in my...
private eyes, and orgies. B-Movie Cast has it all.
We do. And I've just got this picture of this dude on crutches, kind of wandering around a sex orgy going, hey,
yeah, I don't know.
What about me?
Yeah. I thought that was interesting.
Well, And, you know, the CIA was doing a lot of stuff with LSD, so who knows what happened. But that's beside the point.
It's true.
Don't get me started about Project MK Ultra.
Okay. I don't even know what that is, so.
Yeah, and you just should Google it sometime, Mary. It's a wonderful, wonderful rabbit hole. Quite literally. You'll follow the white rabbit right into Alice in Wonderland. And on that note, anything else to add about the film? Not about sex orgies, Mary. You're banned from talking about sex orgies for the rest of the podcast.
I will not talk about anything.
Well, you can talk about something, just not sex orgies, Mary.
Okay.
Is that the only thing you want to talk about?
No, I want to talk about this movie because it was just so great. Everybody's got to see this.
Well, we spent 2 hours talking about it.
I know.
It's a 70-minute movie. We've almost talked about it as long as 2 episodes or 2 showings of the movie would be, Mary.
Yeah. Did Fiona get to see it?
Yes, she did.
Did she like it?
Yes, she did.
Okay, good.
She was surprised by it.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to have Kenny come on and give us some more film noir to watch because I like this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, those people know me as a monster kid, going to the Monster Bash and all that, but the thing with monster movies, I've seen them, I saw them, so many of them as a young person, that they're really ingrained in my brain. So I watch them now. It's like it's almost like I don't need to watch this because I know it by heart. And then trying to catch up on ones I haven't seen, they just don't match up to the classics. But I stay a monster kid because I love the community. I love the Monster Bashers. I love the Monster Kid radio people. I love you guys. But when I discovered noir, which was basically in college, the first noir film that I saw was Mildred Pierce, which stars Joan Crawford. It's one of the A noir films. It was actually a woman's picture, but it's very noirish in its style and the story. But and I realized that, and I started watching, the classics, the Maltese Falcon, The Big Sleep, Out of the Past, Devil Indemnity, all the real super good ones, and then I just fell in love with it. Bought a book on the subject, and just never looked back. And when internet came, and I started seeing about the Film Noir Foundation, and I like noir. If you say, would you rather watch this Bride of Frankenstein or this classic noir, I would almost always choose the noir at this point because I just know those Frankenstein movies by heart. I don't need to watch them again. But these noir films, because I started later in my life with them, they always seem to be surprising to me. There's always something new in them. And this is a good example of why I like noir, what I consider noir. Because noir is not something, these people didn't say, let's make a film noir. People do that now in the neo-noir. Oh, we're going to copy this style. But in those days, they were just making crime movies. They were making those kind of movies. And the French came in and said, hey, these kind of all have the same style. Let's call them film noir. So there's like arguments about what films are noir and which aren't, and there's not a whole agreement and the whole thing. So, but it fascinates me, and I just love, and I've been going through and going to the older noirs, and even some of the older, cheesier noirs have an appeal to me with the seaminess of them, of the snappy dialogue that you can almost find something in these, even the worst of the noirs that are good. So, but it's hard to be like a super noir fan because the noir fans I've met are not as nice as monster kids. So I've been to a couple festivals and they're kind of snobs in a certain respect. And it might be because the festival I go to is in Palm Springs, California, which is a lot different than Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So that might be the difference there. But I just like, I'd go to these festivals and there's just not the same spirit as you have as a Monster Bash. But I love noir, and I find them fascinating, and I'd love to, come every once in a while and share that love and go deeper into some of these great films.
Cool.
you enjoyed this one,
Mm-hmm.
I know you would enjoy it. I was shocked to hear that you were kind of turned off by noir, Mary. I thought it'd be something you would like, but
they usually. Well, I kind of like Carnival Row a lot. I guess the ones that I used to watch with Vince, because he was really into noir. The main characters in the ones I used to watch with him were men that had a decent life, and then something terrible would happen to them. Maybe they made the wrong choice, but it's a choice that I could see myself making. You know, it was a very human flaw choice that they made. And then at the end, inevitably, something terrible happens to them. And it was like, I would feel so close to these people, and then they'd kill them off. And those were the ones that I used to watch with Vince. And they just were so depressing that I just got to the point where I didn't want to watch anymore.
Yeah, that's the thing. There's a certain subgroup of noir films. I know what you're talking about. And there's a lot of those because it was kind of a picture of the veterans returning from the war, and a lot of the and there was a lot of psychological issues that they just didn't know enough about.
Yeah.
But they would often be the source of these films that would lead to that kind of film that you're talking about. And there are many of those, and there are others that are more. I think you would like the what I would call a subgroup of the private eye types, where the convoluted plots. There's a lot going on. It's more of a crime thing, and the character is a sad sack private eye, like the Marlowe films or the Sam Spade films.
I love those.
But those types of noirs, I think you would like. I could steer you away from the pitfalls and the quicksands. Those are actually two films named those, Pitfall and Quicksand, which are examples of the film you're talking about.
Oh, okay.
One with they're both like it's like, oh, this poor guy, he's making all these bad decisions. He has a beautiful wife, a beautiful house, and get involved with the wrong girl and get in trouble.
Yeah.
And those are certain films I can understand. I love those too, but I can understand why you dislike them. But there's another type of noir that's more like this one, where it's like a mystery.
Okay.
And but you're dealing with kind of a sad sack character, like the Brown in this film. Is just kind of he's kind of a sad sack to start with, and then he has tragedy. His partner is killed, but he still has to do this job, and how he handles that. And there's a lot like that as well that I think you would like.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
So there are all kinds of, and it's kind of the interesting thing about the noir community and the there's a lot of literature. They put out a lot of magazines and books. They write a lot of books. It's a very intellectual movement of fans. And it's interesting to see how they interpret things. And there's a lot of hidden things. And when you understand what was going on at the time, why would they make a movie like this? What was happening in the world that would inspire them to make this movie?
Mm-hmm.
It becomes even more interesting because you're seeing a little piece of history. We're not going into a fantasy land, which the monster movies do. We're going into a piece of history, and it's like we're going to take a slice of life and bring some interest into it and bring some crime into it. And obviously it fascinated people because they kept making them from 1941, 1959. There's a ton of these, and in the mid 40s, right after World War II, the 40s to the 50s, this is like the tail end of the super wave. But there was just like a ton of these kinds of movies. It's like the people wanted that slice of life. They wanted, hey, you know what? My life's not as bad as that guy's life.
Okay.
Sometimes I think that's why people make these depressing movies at times, because it makes some people feel like, well, at least my life's not as bad as that guy's life.
Yeah.
Movie. And there's a lot of noirs like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Excuse me.
I did not realize Maltese Falcon was a noir.
Yeah, that's usually considered like the first noir film. They usually put that. There's a couple films before that, and then there's some even 30s films like some of the series like Philo Vance and the Charlie Chan and all that have like noir qualities and mysteries, but usually Maltese Falcon kind of marks this is the first noir, and then there's arguments. Well, maybe this one is or this one is, but for in general, Maltese Falcon is considered the first, and then Orson Welles' classic, The Touch of Evil, would be what is last of the classic noirs, which was made in 1959. So after that, when there were films that they call neo-noir or new noir films, they're basically, they knew what noir was. The French critics, their works had been translated and people knew, and they were, and film noir became a term that people used. And then they started copying that style. And there's a lot of great ones of those. The one that comes to mind instantly is Chinatown with Jack Nicholson and Faye Dunaway, which is a classic neo-noir. It just captures the feel of the 40s noir, the storyline, the period it takes place in, and the storyline. And it's got that convoluted, but yeah, ultimately super depressing. That movie is so depressing, but it's so well done. Yeah. And then there's many others, and then there's even future noir like Blade Runner copies the noir style. Yeah. And brings it into the future, and I like it for that reason. I like the future and the science fiction aspect of it, but it also has that sense of the noir style of story and dialogue, narration. Every aspect of Blade Runner kind of has that feel to it. Yeah. So it's a fascinating thing, a fascinating genre to study, and it's also interesting to see the discussions, the arguments of no, that's noir, no, that's not noir. One of my favorite films that I saw, the cinematographer was a great noir cinematographer, but they made a film. It was about the French Revolution. Okay, so that's about as far from noir as you could imagine. But his stylistics were so great, and the story had a noir feel to it that it's like, this is like a noir film. Could this be a noir film? And not long after that, Eddie Muller, he does little clips on TCM where he talks about, is it noir or not? Is it noir or not? Oh. And he brought out that film. It's called The Black Book. And he said, yeah, this is a noir film, even though it's about the French Revolution. So it all depends on the perspective. Is it about the story? Is it about the style? Is it a combination? Yeah. Everybody has, a monster movie is a monster movie. But noir, there's a lot of nuance, and for some people it is, and some people it isn't a particular film. Okay. And it's fascinating to hear that. But the people that I've met and the people I've when I go to these film festivals, they are not as nice as monster kids. So that's why I'm still a monster kid, too.
I think I just like, especially the 40s and 50s movies, just seeing that, like you said, slice of life, that it's like watching history. Because they're filmed in their time period, so they're authentic. Authentic cars and clothing and costumes, and just like with the train thing, there's just things that I don't think about now. Like that's another fun way to look at them, because like if you watch a certain group of noirs, you can see what life was like in Los Angeles. Yeah, because a lot of them are based in Los Angeles, so you could line them all up, and then you could see the different neighborhoods, the different places, and get a sense of what Los Angeles was like in the mid 40s to early 50s. Yeah. And it has that historical perspective to it too. Yeah. The cars, the styles, that's a fun perspective to take to a film noir. It's like, what is this telling me about this time? Yeah. Because it's not some fantasy land. It's not some far off time that the filmmakers don't really know about. Like if you say, well, I'm going to make a movie about the French Revolution, I don't know what it was like back then. They're making it up. But when you make a film about your time, and that's it freezes that time. So when you watch a 40s noir, you're seeing the 40s, what it was like, what they were driving, what they were wearing, and that's a fun way to look at them as well. Yeah. Just watching people walk into phone booths.
What's that?
Yeah. You go into the hotel lobby and there's banks of phone booths that people walk up to, and it's like, wow. Yeah. But thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, how did you get
Thank
to be?
you for having me.
How do you get to be a Film Noir Society member?
Well, it's a simple. If you give $20 a year, like a one-time donation of $20, then you're a dues-paying member. That's what I call myself. But basically, for that $20, they send you a very nice. It is a digital magazine, so I read it on my phone. But it's a very well done, well studied magazine. Probably around 100 to 150 pages each issue, and it has a lot of material. And they'll pick a theme and have several articles on that theme, and then there's columns that they have. So it's like an old style magazine in a digital format, and you get that. And if you would go and buy that magazine now, it would probably be $15 at the Barnes and Noble, but you get it for $20. You get 4 of them for $20 on your phone. So
okay.
And then you get on their list, and they send you all the information. They have different festivals around the country, mostly in the big cities. And then the guy on TCM, Eddie Muller, he does a thing on Facebook where he will answer people's questions. He does that about twice a month. I don't join those too often, but the ones I have done there, he's really good. He's a very friendly guy, and just and he'll answer questions that you send in. So, cool. So it's fun. It's fun to be a fan. Again, I just haven't met anyone that made me want to hang out with them like Monster Kids do. But it's fun to read the material. It's fun to study it, and there's a lot of material. There's constantly coming out with books and articles, and because there's a lot of depth. There's a lot to mine out of it, psychologically, historically, and cinematically as well. So it's a fascinating genre.
Cool. Again, thank you for this movie. I loved it.
Yeah, for real. This was a lot of fun. And thanks for the history of how to tell if something's film noir, sort of, because everybody sort of has to work it out for themselves. But you know what? It makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. It's very subjective. It's a subjective thing where you can't say, well, this is definitely this. Some of the films, like there's a certain type of noir film that they call noir that I don't like as much, and I don't consider it noir. And they're more like police procedurals. And there's a narration, and you feel like you're watching Dragnet or CSI or something, and they're just going through the motions. And they call some of those noir, and I was like, to me, that's not noir because it's not seamy enough. It doesn't have the snappy dialogue. They're almost semi-documentaries. And sometimes when I see that, when I read the thing, it says, "Oh, this is film noir," and you look at the thing, and it says, "Oh, this is a semi-documentary about them looking, the postal." Inspectors looking for counterfeiters or something like that. It's like, it's gonna be one of those. And I would say, for me, that's not noir. But they put them in the noir encyclopedias. They call them noir, and he'll put them on Noir Alley on TCM. So a lot of people consider them noirs. I don't. So that's just my opinion, and that's what it is. It's about your opinion and what you think and feel at times. There's no, this is noir. And of course, there's going to be people that say their opinion is absolutely right and you have to believe them, but you don't. You can just decide for yourself.
Yeah. Cool. Well, are we done with the movie? We
are.
Very little feedback, so do you want to get on with the feedback?
Sure.
Fine with me.
Okay.
Feed it back to me.
Feed it back. We have 2 pieces of feedback. One is from Daryl Majewski from Scream Magazine. He said, we're putting the finishing touches on the massive Beast of Scream editions that will hit the market at the end of April. The Beast of Scream features 2 new covers by acclaimed artist Richard Hilliard. What is wonderful about our Beast of Scream editions is that they contain 3 classic early editions of the magazine housed in a special protective oversized poly bag. Inside contents, besides the 3 issues, include a 17 by 22 posters of current and classic Scream covers, a set of 6 Scream postcards, a specially produced CD of classic horror radio slashers of the 1970s and 80s, and for a limited amount, okay, that's for the advertisers. I'm advertising in this Beast of Scream edition, so keep an eye out in April for the Beast of Scream edition that Daryl's putting out, and hopefully we can get him on soon. Maybe May or June when it finally calms down in the publishing business for him. So thank you, Daryl.
Yeah.
And see, this last one is from Marlo Brown. Says, "Hi, Mary, Nick, and the rest of the gang. The contest answer is Death Sport, 1978, with the late, great David Carradine, as well as the lovely Claudia Jennings, who made an amazing number of films in a career that was sadly cut short."
Yeah.
How did you get cut short? Was she the one that got murdered by the
dying,
skier?
Mary.
Was she the one that was killed by the skier?
No.
Oh, okay.
That was Sonny Bono.
What?
Actually, he died skiing, but no. Okay, Claudia Jennings had gone through a lot of drug and alcohol problems throughout her career, and I actually have some interesting stories about how that led into what happened on the set of Death Sport, but that's beside the point. So Death Sport came out, I think it was 77 was when they filmed it, 78's when they released it. About 1979, she went into rehab, got herself cleaned up, and had broken up with the boyfriend that had gotten her into all the drugs and such and was really perpetuating it for her. And she had gone to his place to get her stuff and loaded in the car and drove off and got killed in a car accident.
Oh.
Yeah. So, Mary, when we say tragically cut short, that usually doesn't mean she retired.
Well, no, for some reason I thought she was, what was that girl's name? She was a minor movie star that was killed by her boyfriend who was a skier.
Okay. You're talking about, it was, they made a movie about it with Mariel Hemingway called Star 80, and I'm trying to remember the name of the actress, and I can't.
Okay. Well, never mind. He goes on to say, "Sorry for not being in touch."
Dorothy Stratton.
That's it.
Yeah.
She was a Playboy model or something, wasn't she?
Yes, she was. Okay. She was also in a few movies.
Okay.
And then she was dead.
In a tragic ending.
Yeah. Which has nothing to do with Claudia Jennings.
Okay, back out of the rabbit hole. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Sorry for not being in touch. I retired from being a technology person in a school district, but I'm very happy to say I am working as a librarian again. Not a Universal Monsters librarian, nor a librarian of the living dead, but a part-time science librarian, which can be also rewarding. I found a life-size cutout of Frankenstein's monster from Bride of Frankenstein in a corner of my office on my first day. It had been used for a Halloween display, and I, of course, asked them to leave it there. It's comforting. Okay.
That's kind of awesome.
I totally enjoyed Shape of Water. What a great film that I sadly had not seen until your recent cast prompted me. I was struck by how great the film looked. The facility where Eliza worked, her apartment, and that of Giles and the car dealership all looked amazing and helped pull me into the film. Loved it. Thank you. Thank you. I love that movie too. It's one of my favorites.
Well, thanks to that letter, I know what kind of gift to put together for Marlo. Thanks for thanks for participating, Marlo, because you expressed so much about your life. You will get a gift that will benefit you and your science library.
Oh, Oh, you have to post that one. I have to see what that one's going to be. He goes on to say, I haven't been to the movies in quite a while, but B-movies keep me happy. I'm planning to see the latest in the John Wick series soon, however. Finally, with the passing of Rico Browning, perhaps you might consider featuring one of his films. I believe Creature from the Black Lagoon was discussed by Vince in the early days of the cast. So maybe y'all might want to do one of the other two Gilman films. Or even Thunderball. Or Disney's 1954 version of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Written by
Well, that
Earl
one has
Felton.
come up a few times, hasn't it?
And directed by Richard Fleischer.
Yes. That is weird. I actually had to look it up. I did not realize he was in there. He was one of the stunt divers in that one. I was sad to learn of Mr. Browning's passing. The original Creature film from 1954 is one of my all-time favorites, and his work in the film was amazing. Thanks again for such a wonderful podcast. Bye, Mary. Bye, Marlo. From the haunted borderlands of South Texas. And that's it.
Well, I got close to the border he is. I have to check on a map when I get the address, because I'm a border dweller too, but the other side of the border.
Yeah. Oh.
I'm in North Mexico.
Wow. Okay.
Well, this was a good cast, guys. Thank you all very much.
I learned so much. We definitely have to get Kenny on again and do more film noir.
Well, yeah, and it's sort of like when we have, when we have anybody, really, because we pull in a lot of people who have good, solid knowledge.
Yeah.
And that's handy. Now, I was thinking, Matt Kowalski, because every time he's on, I come away with a greater appreciation of the geopolitical situation in Eastern Europe.
Truth.
So, and that's no joke.
It's something
really
we all
do.
hunger for. Constantly looking for more knowledge about Eastern Europe.
Well, that's
but it is fascinating. I enjoy Matt a lot.
Yeah.
As a friend and as a guest on the Movie Cast.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Well, thank you again for coming on, Kenny, though. Seriously, it was a lot of fun, and I did learn a lot about, film noir.
Yes.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I finally, giving all those free gifts away is finally I got the reward I've been seeking. A guest on a B-Movie Cast. Something more to add to my resume. So thank you so much.
You haven't been
making my head swell even more.
I thought for sure you were on back in the old days when we first started with Vince.
I did some feedbacks, I think, and I don't know why I don't do more like audio feedbacks and things, but I'm see if I get inspired to do that a little bit more, and because I enjoy being a part, like with Monster Kid Radio, as mentioned in the intro you read earlier. I do a segment for them every week, and it's something for me that's creative. That kind of I have a good job, but it's kind of blah. And but it gets me. I get a chance to do something creative and something that people appreciate. And it makes me feel good. So I appreciate that opportunity that Derek Cook has given me, and your doors are always open for some feedback. So maybe you'll hear from me more often.
Cool.
Because I enjoy doing stuff like that. But thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it and enjoy talking about film noir with you guys.
Yes. Thank you. And it's time to go. So, bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Adios, amigos. Adios.
Perfect.
Adios, Mafia.
Well, they've gone.
For good, John?
No, just for now. It wasn't the right time for us to meet. But there'll be other nights, other stars for us to watch.
I'll be back.
The ghosts are moving tonight, restless, hungry.
All right, fellas, here's your story.
Greetings, my friend. We are all interested in the future, for that is where you and I are going to spend the rest of our lives. And we cannot keep this a secret any longer.
Wait, Captain. I have found evidence of intelligent beings on this planet.
Look to the skies, it's the B-Movie Cookbook. Menus inspired by 15 of your favorite B-movies from the 1950s, with teenage werewolves, blobs, and enough cheese for everyone.
When we return to our planet, the High Court may well sentence you to torture.
But until then, we've got Ed Wood and Vincent Price.
There'll be food and drink and ghosts, and perhaps even a few murders. You're all invited.
So impress your friends with dinner and a movie with the B-Movie Cookbook. We've got you covered. Get your copy today at bmoviecookbook.com. That's bmoviecookbook.com.
Let me see that book. I am interested to see what sways your mind so heavily.
Sure thing, just visit bmoviecookbook.com.
Anybody around here want some coffee?
Transmission.
The good guys always win, even in the 80s.